Chuck is the second of 2 brawlers coming into this Brawl Stars update, and today I'm going to show you his base level interactions against every other brawler in the game. We're going to see how well he does, and I'm going to give you some specific examples of how you should be playing him, as well as how to counter him. Now, Chuck is a mythic brawler who is a member of the Ghost Train trio alongside Gus. Now, Brawl Stars hasn't given us an exact release date yet, but I'm guessing that he will be available sometime in the middle of the season. But you don't have to wait to see him in action, because we're going to jump right into the battles, pitting Chuck against his own class of brawlers, the damage dealers. Chuck's main shot is kind of like a hybrid between Nita and Ems. It goes in a straight line just like Nita as well as Pierce's, but its range is a tiny bit further. However, it shoots out 3 bursts of hot steam with 3 ticks of damage just like Ems. Now, the further away you are from the target, the less damage it will deal. At maximum range, it deals 660 damage per tick, and at close range, it deals 1080 damage. Now, while Chuck isn't nearly as tanky as some brawlers, with 9,000 hit points, he certainly isn't fragile. That being said, he is no match for the kind of damage that Chester can pump out. And while Colette can't quite get the job done, 8-Bit has plenty of damage to chew through his hit points. However, brawlers with lower hit points themselves, like Colt and Rico, can't stand in the fight long enough to get all of their shots off. Now, other brawlers like Shelly don't have a lot of trouble beating him, and one of the main reasons why is his shots take a long time to unload and deal that damage. That being said, as you can clearly see, he has enough damage to beat most of these brawlers, thanks in part to that high health pool. Now, brawlers like RT and Eve that have decent health as well as decent damage still can't seem to take him out even at close range. And in a real game, you're going to want to get close enough to deal enough damage to make a dent, and his max range damage, it really just isn't enough. Now, many brawlers have star powers that help them in all-around combat, but Chuck, well, he's different. All of his gadgets and his star powers are focused around his super. And that super is not just a simple damaging blast or something like that, and I'll explain all of it after we face off against the next group of brawlers, the tanks. Now, the tanks thrive on getting close to brawlers to flex that superior damage, and as you can see, brawlers like Bull and Daryl, they're able to beat down on Chuck at close range without any real problems whatsoever. Rosa and Chuck, however, really duke it out, and Meg has to get use of her star power to knock Chuck back and finish him off in normal form. Hank and Chuck are about as close of a match as you can get, and honestly, Chuck does pretty darn well against these other big bruisers, even considering that his damage output is much lower than many other brawlers. But in a real game, Chuck has an ace up his sleeve for dealing with these close range brawlers. And this is probably the coolest thing about Chuck and what really makes him unique. Now, Chuck starts each game with his super ready to go, as well as it automatically charges, and rather fast at that. With this super, he's able to throw a post in a large radius. Now, after he's placed down this post, he can use his super to race to that post. And if you hit somebody on the way, you'll deal a massive 3,500 damage to them. And if you have a second star power equipped, you'll even take away a third of their ammo along with the damage. Now, his super button has 2 different states, and it's very clear which one is active. If you see the post, that means you're ready to place one of those posts. And if you see the train, that means that you're within range of one of those posts and you're going to race to the nearest one if you press it. Now, that's all pretty cool, but it gets even cooler because Chuck can actually place up to 3 posts and connect them. To connect them, you need to place them no farther apart than the radius shown when you go to throw down that post. But his first star power actually allows him to place an additional one for a total of 4 posts. Okay, so why does this matter with tanks? Well, tanks thrive on close range, and you can very easily stay out of reach of them. You just place your posts down and keep out of their range, and if they get close, well, you just press that super button and zip right away from them. And they'll either have to give up or just chase you all over the map. And let me just say, it is really fun. But it doesn't just affect tanks, because this ability, combined with the gadget, will absolutely wreck our next group of brawlers. Now, against all of these throwers, of course, Chuck smashes them in the interactions. Grom gets destroyed, and Barley goes down faster than the Titanic. Tick gets exactly what he deserves, and Penny, well, she puts up a fight, but gets chucked overboard. In a real game, these throwers will have no problem with Chuck, as he can't break walls, but that's where Chuck's secret weapon comes into play. Now his second gadget is called Ghost Train, and when activated, this allows Chuck's next super to pass through walls. So just throw down a post behind the wall, and when they least expect it, you pop your gadget, you zip straight through the wall, and you end up right in their lap. And when this happens, they really don't stand much of a chance. Alternatively, you could even situate your post so that they loop around the wall. And with this sort of mobility, no thrower is safe. Now, marksmen are the masters of long-range combat, and of course, Chuck is going to get thrashed if they are placed at max range, as, well, he couldn't even hit them. But if we place them both in range of each other, Chuck easily has the health and the damage to take brawlers like Piper out. Bea barely gets her shots off before getting melted, but Nani has incredible power and does a great job. But for the most part, as you can see, these brawlers cannot stand toe-to-toe with Chuck. Well, except Bonnie, but that's only if she launches herself at him. In that case, well, the toothless child Rex Mortis in the train. Now, in a game, if you're playing a long-range brawler, you're going to want to stay back, of course, but you see, that's the thing. Chuck isn't going to let you do that. Once he gets his posts placed, he can zip across the map and be right next to you faster than my 5th grade girlfriend dumped me. Trust me, that was fast. What you're going to want to do is pay attention to his posts and try to keep a safe distance from that post itself. So if he does show up, you're not a sitting duck and you're ready for him. The assassins are a deadly bunch that thrive on mobility and surprise, but by those standards, Chuck could have been an assassin too. And when we look at these matchups, you're going to see that Chuck trades blows with all of these brawlers. He beats Crow, although it's not a runaway fight, but in the next one, he loses to Leon in a close one. Buzz is able to take him out even without using a stun, but Stu doesn't deal enough damage. This story continues with the other assassins too, as this is really a close matchup, and in a real game, it's going to be a very dynamic fight. On one hand, if the assassins get the drop on Chuck, they will most likely be the ones walking away as the winner. But Chuck has more mobility than any brawler that has ever been in the game. If the assassins do surprise him, he's just one super away from being on the complete other side of the map. And if they're far away, like attacking your teammate, Chuck can zip over and come to the rescue. Bottom line, these fights could go so many different ways that there's just no way to predict them. But one thing I do know, they're going to be awesome to be a part of. Now, support brawlers aren't exactly known for their superior damage dealing abilities, and this is on full display as Chuck just tears through them. Byron's damage barely starts to tick when his time expires, and Gus, well, I mean, Gus is throwing a balloon at a train. How did you think it was going to go? Now, the only brawler here that really puts Chuck down with ease is Pam. This close up, she can easily deal with the damage and in turn gives it right back. Doug does make it a good fight as well, but Ruffs and Max just cannot compete. In a game setting, this is going to be a real tough matchup for the support brawlers. With the extreme mobility that Chuck offers, he can be in and out of fights and keep harassing brawlers with solid damage and movement. Now, our last group to face off against Chuck are the controllers. Now, these brawlers don't usually do the best here, but there are some exceptions, like Griff. Griff has insane damage and deals with even the highest hit point brawlers, and Chuck, he's no exception. As well, Mr. P does really well here as he's able to get a second hit from every suitcase, although in a game that's usually not going to be the case. Now, Lou does get Alpha Brain Freeze, but it's a little too late, and Squeak can't get the job done either. Bo, however, usually puts up a good fight in these interactions, and that's true in this one as well. Gale tries his best, but falls short, and as we move through these last brawlers here, you're going to see that Chuck has plenty of power to deal with all sorts of brawlers in Brawl Stars. So then, you've seen Chuck 1v1 versus every brawler in Brawl Stars, and you're probably wondering if he's going to be really good in-game. Well, I do have some thoughts on that, but first off, to directly answer that question, yes, he is going to be very good. Now, while his damage isn't quite on Pearl's level, it's still pretty darn good. His range is very respectable, his damage is decent, and he has above average hit points. But the question you should be asking is this: should I switch to Chuck and unlock him? And the answer for that, at least for me, is a resounding yes. Chuck is one of the most fun brawlers that I've played in a very long time. I absolutely love his mechanics with all the different train stops. His mobility is unlike anything that we have ever seen. Now, he isn't a total powerhouse, but he more than makes up for it with mobility and fun. I think Chuck is going to be really good in many different game modes. His ability to escape when needed or to get up the field and complete objectives, score goals, grab gems, or just help teammates is absolutely unparalleled. Now, I think Solo Showdown may be his worst mode, but he certainly won't be horrible there. Overall, I'm going to give Chuck 2 different grades. For overall enjoyment and fun, it's easily a 10 out of 10 for me. I find Chuck incredibly fun to play. However, grading him on how good he is, well, he's not quite as perfect there. His shots do take a while to unload, so you're not going to get full damage on every shot, and that hurts him. But nevertheless, he is still very good, and I think an 8 out of 10 sounds about right. And with that, update complete.